Welcome to Comics League. I'm Jared, and today we are talking about Unworthy Thor, otherwise known as the storyline that Thor 5 really should have been based on, actually Thor 4. But I don't know, I digress. I figured I'd be a little experimental. So for this video, I'm giving you a short summary of Jason Aaron's Thor run. But the way I'm going to do this, and this is actually really cool, is I broke out another camera, and I'm going to give you guys the comic cam, which basically, as I go through the storyline, this is gonna be like your way of like following along to like so essentially you don't have to like have me do this, like flip through the book, then occasionally if there's a good piece of art, I'll show it up like this. No, this way you can follow along and see exactly what I'm seeing. So let's get started. I'm just getting the camera all aligned. So again, this is The Unworthy Thor by Jason Aaron and art by Olivier Coipel. Fantastic book. And it's one of my favorite Thor stories of all time. Yes, I do read Thor. But this is basically showing the aftermath of what happened, of Thor losing the ability to lift the hammer. So let's get to work. Unworthy Thor by Jason Aaron. There. Minimize this. So we have these beings are engaged in battle with this space Viking-esque man, which is obviously Thor. He doesn't have his hammer, so he's taking a beating. Then he wakes. He's like holding his hands to this axe-like thing. And that'll be revealed later. So now we cut to 3 months earlier, and Thor is drinking and talking with some trolls before he fights them, and then later kills them. Then Thor's goats, and before you ask, these goats do not scream like idiots. That got old really fast in that movie. So Thor fights and kills all the trolls, and then he talks about being unable to lift the hammer. This is where it happened. And then someone tells Thor there is another hammer. You just have to go find it. It's being held by the collector or something like that. So Thor hops on the goat and flies off. And he's met by Beta Ray Bill, who offers him actually Stormbreaker. Then Thor says, no, that's your hammer. It's not mine. That was entrusted to you. I will find my own hammer. So at this point, we have Thor and Beta Ray Bill team up and fight these space creatures, these spaceships, and blow them up. And then Thor is actually captured. He has a nightmare where he's being tortured by Gor. Then he wakes up and finds he's the captive of the Collector. And if those who don't know, Collector was Jeff Goldblum. So this was kind of like it was in the movie, Thor Ragnarok. So here, essentially, Thor, he shows them something fell into my collection recently. And we see it's the ultimate hammer from the ultimate universe. And this is like really, really, really big. And what's interesting about this is that, yeah, you have to be worthy to wield this, but if you're not worthy, you blow up. So he seems that the robots are flesh, that none of his minions can touch it, and he wants to basically run an experiment. He's tried all the magic, he's tried everything he can. So what he essentially tells Thor is lift the hammer or I'll kill this kid. Thor goes to it and seems to recognize him, probably because it was from the ultimate Thor. He's knocked out and brought into a cell. At the same time, that hooded figure goes to a being and says, hey, I need your help. I need you to, and actually Thanos goes, okay, why would I help you? Yes, it's Thanos. And then the hooded figure goes, okay, so what do you want? And Thanos says, I want a tribute. And I know just what I want is tribute. So essentially, he wants that hammer. So Thor is again fighting all these creatures. And he's reminded of like Gor. He's reminded of Jane Foster Thor. He's basically reminded of everything that brought him to it. It turns out this was all like a dream in his cell. And then what happens is he finds he's sharing his cell with like a hellhound. That's basically what I'm going to call it. It's a hellhound. And from here, he tries to escape. And then he's shocked by the bars, and they're like, "You'll never get out." And then he's saved by Beta Ray Bill, except this time Thor hallucinates that Bill is wielding Mjolnir, and Thor goes into a rage and starts attacking Thor, Beta Ray Bill. At the same time, the Black Order, otherwise known as Thanos' henchmen, follow the hooded figure through the Collector's base because they want the hammer too for Thanos. Then Thor again gets into this rage. Beta Ray drops the hammer. Thor almost lifts it, but Proxima Midnight stops him, and then obviously, what's the word? Beta Ray Bill summons the hammer to him, so they don't essentially get Stormbreaker. So at this point, also we have the Black Order escapes, and then they get to the actual hammer. And then what's actually interesting is that again, more people try to lift it than they can. And then we see Thor essentially has the haircut he had in Thor Ragnarok. He teams up with his goat, his Hellhound, and Beta Ray Bill. He's got a giant axe. And then we have a flashback where Thor is essentially talking about his progress. It's basically a flashback to when Thor was not worthy of wielding Mjolnir. And it's his way of essentially like he goes through 3 flashbacks, and this is the one that's showing how hard he tried to become worthy to lift Mjolnir. So at the same time, we get this epic shot, and Coipel's art is like absolutely fantastic. Then we have this Death being tried to lift the hammer, and then she can't. And then we see Jane Foster and Thor, and they have a conversation where Thor tells her he's afraid that essentially, he said, "It took me many years to be worthy to lift Mjolnir, many years and many dragons, and ultimately a particularly unpleasant showdown, which 'tis a story for another time. Yet worthiness is not an absolute condition. It's something for which every god must never stop thriving. I fear this hammer because every morning when I wake, I will never know if I'll be able to lift it again," meaning every day he's not sure if he can lift Mjolnir. And Jane Foster says, "It doesn't matter. You're still a hero no matter what." Same time, we have this epic battle between Thor's Team Thor essentially and Team Thanos. And essentially Thor now has the opportunity to lift the hammer, but then he's drawn back by the Collector. In this next flashback, we see Thor after he's unworthy of wielding Mjolnir. It's kind of interesting. In the previous flashback, it said the private quarters of Thor. Now it says the private quarters of the Odin son, which is stupid because Thor is not a mantle, but I'll talk about that at the end of this video. Jane Foster says, "You're still Thor no matter what. It doesn't matter." So again, Thor heads off and starts and charges the Collector, frees himself, and then lifts the hammer, lifts Stormbreaker. And at some point, he decides, you know what? It's not my hammer. I may be Thor, but here's the thing. This belonged to a Thor, but it's not mine. So he throws it away. He essentially casts it aside. And then Thor essentially deals with the rest of Thanos' forces, and then he escapes the Collector. Thanos freaks out because they failed him, and the hooded figure is revealed to be Hela, the goddess of death. And then obviously in the MCU design, and she kisses Thanos. And then Thor is telling the story to Beta Ray Bill about what happened. Nick Fury whispered Gor's last words that said the gods were not worthy. And then that essentially put like a psychic block on Thor, so he can't wield the hammer. And then we see the War Thor emerge. In other words, this being walks up, grabs Stormbreaker, and takes off. So that's essentially Unworthy Thor. Hope you guys enjoyed, by the way, having the comic cam. I thought that was like an interesting way to basically innovate the way I do stories. So the way it's going to work from now on is that whenever I do a story, if I have the trade of it, it'll be on this stand, and then we'll have the comic camera, because I think that way it's a lot easier for you guys to enjoy more of the art instead of just me finding like select panels and just holding it up to the camera. So it's a little more fun. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. So my thoughts on the storyline. I like it a lot. Even though it's Jason Aaron, I do really wish, like really wish that this was the plot for the Thor movie that was just released. But here's the thing. They would have to redo Ragnarok too in order to do that storyline, because Ragnarok was, I don't know, kind of they kind of put an unworthy Thor into Ragnarok, but he still had his powers. I would love to have seen like Thor completely lose his powers. Then the post-credit scene for Ragnarok is showing that there's someone that can wield the hammer. And that's when we get Jane Foster in Thor 4. And then we see Thor trying to earn back the hammer. That would be the way I would do it, honestly. And abandon all the Taika Waititi humor. But I've made that point both on the Thor live stream and Thor and Love and Thunder review that I did for Under Two Capes. But that's beyond the point. But I will say I love the art of Olivier Coipel. I love the 3 flashbacks that basically say, okay, so here's Thor when he was striving to be worthy. Here's Thor when he was worthy and still being like insecure and if he can lift the hammer. And then there's Thor when he's unworthy. And then what I like is that the way he gets the hammer back is he reforges Mjolnir in the Heart of a Dying Star, I guess, to fight Malekith in War of the Realms. And he basically says, yeah, we're not worthy, but well, actually, here's the thing. I've always been worthy. I just didn't know it yet. So in other words, it completely retcons that out of existence. Now, my problem with Jason Aaron is that he basically tried to make the claim that Thor is a mantle and not a name. And I'm sorry, dude, it's not, because actually it's inscribed on that hammer, right? It's on the cover of your trade. It says here, whosoever holds this hammer, if they be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. It doesn't say shall become Thor. It says they shall have the power of Thor. That's a big difference, because the mantle would only work. It'd only be a mantle if it said shall become Thor. No. So that even more proves to me that Jason Aaron doesn't understand superheroes, like when he turns She-Hulk into a hulking monster. But I'm not going to go into that. I'll go into that when I cover the first trade of his Avengers run. But again, it's a very enjoyable comic. I highly recommend it. I would give it like a 5 out of 5, honestly, because the art's great, the story's great. You see Thor trying to like, essentially, I count this as Thor trying to prove that he's still a hero despite the fact that he doesn't have the hammer. And he's like hacking through the Collector's forces. He's standing up to the Black Order, in a way, standing up to Thanos. So it's actually really cool the way they do that. So that's where I think I'm going to leave it. I hope you guys very much enjoyed this new way of doing stories, and it's a new thing, and I think I'm going to keep it because I have the equipment, and I think it adds a little more fun and makes you guys less passive and more active participants in the story. Let me know what you guys think, and let me know what other storylines you would like to for me to cover on these short little Monday videos. And by the way, so the way Monday videos are going to go is that every so often I'll do a storyline to kind of break up the monotony. It'll still be like general videos, but every so often I'll do a story this way. Anyway, stay heroic, everyone, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.